Before you sell everything back home and start putting your retirement money into land, a house, or a condo in Thailand, I think you need to slow down and understand what you're really doing. I'm not saying that to scare anybody, and I'm not saying that nobody should ever buy property in Thailand. Plenty of people do it, and some of them are happy with the decision. But buying property in Thailand is not the same as buying a house back in Missouri, Texas, Florida, or wherever you're from. And if you come over here thinking it works the same way, you can make a very expensive mistake. A lot of men come to Thailand and the idea starts making sense pretty darn fast. The weather's great, the food's good, the people are super friendly, and if you're tired of the cost of living back home, Thailand can feel like somebody opened up a door you didn't know was there. Maybe you're already married to a Thai woman, or maybe you meet somebody here, and pretty soon the conversation starts moving from renting a place to buying land or building a house. And that is usually the point where a man needs to take a breath, because once the money is spent and the concrete is poured, it's a lot harder to change your mind after that. So the real question is not just, can I afford to build a house in Thailand? That's only one part of the equation. The better question is, what do I actually own when it's done? What does my wife or partner own? What does the family own? And what happens if life changes for me? That may not be the fun part of the dream, but it's the part that can keep a good idea from turning into a financial mess and a nightmare for you. Before I get too far into this, I want to be clear about something. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm not sitting here telling anybody how to live their life. I'm just a retired guy who spends a lot of time in Thailand. I'm married into a Thai family, and I try to look at these things from a practical retirement point of view. What I'm talking about in this video is not legal advice. It's common sense retirement thinking. And if you're seriously thinking about buying property or building a house in Thailand, you need to talk to a real Thai attorney who represents you. Also, if you're thinking about moving to Thailand and retiring here, selling your house back home, or trying to figure out what this life really does cost you, go over to ricksadventurestv.com. I have the Thailand Reality Guide, the Thailand Cost Calculator spreadsheet, and the bundle if you want both. I also offer one-on-one consulting calls if you want to talk through your situation before you make a big move. Property is one of those decisions where guessing can get very expensive, and sometimes it helps to have somebody look at the whole picture with you before you start moving retirement money around, especially if you can talk to somebody that's already been there, done it, and seen what kind of mistakes that can be made. Property in Thailand looks really, really tempting, and I completely get it, guys. When buying property in Thailand, you come over here and start comparing prices to the USA or your country, and your mind starts playing with you. Maybe you see a piece of land that looks really cheap compared to anything back home. Maybe your wife's family already has land and everybody starts talking about building a house. Maybe you look at a condo near the beach and think, I could never buy anything like this back in the States, which is true for this kind of money. After years of property taxes, insurance, utilities, mortgage payments, repairs, and all the other bills that come with owning a place back in my home state of Missouri, the idea of having something simple in Thailand can sound pretty damn good. The kind of thing that kind of thinking is not really crazy. I've had some of those same thoughts myself. When you get older, you start looking at your life differently. You start wondering why you're keeping a house, a shop, vehicles, tools, insurance, taxes, all the junk that keeps you tied down. Thailand can make a man start asking some serious questions about what he really needs in life and what is just dragging around because he's always had it. But this is where I think people can get themselves into trouble if they're not very, very cautious. They start with a lifestyle question and turn it into a property decision too fast. They feel good in Thailand, so they assume buying something will make that feeling permanent. They think if they build a house, buy the condo, or put money into some land, then the dream is locked in. But property doesn't solve every problem, you guys. Sometimes it creates a whole quagmire of new ones, especially if you do not understand the rules in Thailand. The relationships in Thailand, the family expectations and culture. You need to have your own exit plan before you spend any serious money like this. Guys, living in a house is not the same as owning your own future. One of the biggest misunderstandings that I see foreigners have in Thailand is the difference between living in a house and legally owning the situation. Back in my home country of America and in Missouri, most of us grew up with a really simple idea. You buy a house, you buy the land under it, your name is on the title deed, and unless the bank has a mortgage on it, you know where you stand. There's still taxes, insurance, repairs, but the basic idea is, it's pretty simple and easy to understand. Thailand is a completely different animal. A foreigner cannot own land here. That's just the law. You're going to hear a lot of people come up with workarounds with that, but the Thai government is clamping down on that a lot. So I wouldn't fall for that or listen to it. You're going to hear about all kinds of things like, leases and company structures and, just different ways of getting 30 and 60 and 90-year leases. And the biggest part of it, can lead to some real legal problems for you. Some of those arrangements can be legal when they're done the correct way. Some can be very risky and some are really misunderstood. So it's maybe something that you shouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole personally. That's why I don't like when people give simple answers to complicated problems. Sometimes people just say, just put it in a company or just put it in your wife's name or just get a lease. Like that magically solves things and it's really simple. Maybe it works for one person in one situation, but that doesn't mean it's going to be right for you. Your age matters, your marriage matters, your savings matters, your health, visa situations, backup plans. All the paperwork matters. And most of all, whether you actually understand what you're signing matters. I mean, that's a big deal over here. It's completely different how they file things. Before you put serious money into land or a house in Thailand, you really need somebody qualified, a good attorney over here to explain the documents to you, not the seller. Don't trust that. Not the developer, not your girlfriend's cousin, not some guy at the coffee shop or the bar that's been here and thinks he knows all this. The laws are constantly changing. You need a real, true attorney to represent you in your interests. Because if something goes wrong, those other people aren't going to be the ones trying to rebuild your retirement. You're the one that's going to lose it. You're the one that's going to have the problem. All right, guys, condos can be different here, but they're not the magic fix. They're a little different because foreigners can often legally own a condominium unit in Thailand. But even that has rules and details people need to understand before you make a big move. There is a foreign ownership quota, and you need to know whether the unit you're buying is actually in the foreign quota or not. You also need to understand how the money has to come into Thailand, what paperwork is required, what the monthly building fees are, and whether the building is being properly maintained. A lot of people look at condos like they're clean and easy and the magic answer. In some cases, maybe they are. If a man wants something simple, doesn't want land, doesn't want to deal with a house, and wants to live in a city or near the beach or condo, it may make sense. But owning a condo does not mean all the problems go away. You still have monthly fees, you still have building rules, you still have neighbors above you and below you and beside you. You still can really have resale issues. You have currency risk. You still have to ask whether you picked the right location or just fell in love with a place during a good week on a vacation. And that vacation part matters more than people want to admit. A place can feel awesome when you're there for 10 days, eating out every night, walking around without really having any responsibilities of any kind. You're just enjoying yourself every single day. You think life is going to be like that forever. But living somewhere full time can be completely different. Sometimes that traffic can get old. Sometimes you might have neighbors or maybe they rent their condo. It can get noisy. Rainy season comes, tourist season comes, maintenance problems show up. The building looked nice when it was new, may not look so nice 5 or 10 years later. Condos tend to do that in Thailand. They don't tend to maintain them really well. The cheap condo might be a bargain or it might be cheap for a reason. I'm not against condos. I'm not against buying one, at all. What I'm against is buying one too fast because Thailand made you feel good for a little while. There's a difference between making a smart retirement decision and investment and trying to buy just a feeling. Trust me, it can really go south on you quick. So take your time and think it through. All right, let's talk about buying or building with a Thai wife. Now let's talk about the part that gets to the personal level, and that is buying or building with a Thai wife. I'm married to a Thai woman, so I'm not talking about this from the outside looking in. When you're married, you're not just some tourist walking around with big ideas. You're building a life with another person, and sometimes building a home together is part of that life. But, even in the best of marriages, you still need to understand what you're doing. If the land is in your wife's name, then the land is in your wife's name. That doesn't mean your wife is doing anything wrong. That doesn't mean your marriage is bad. It just means you need to be honest with yourself about that legal reality, because you can't change that. And that along with that comes the financial risk of it. A man can love his wife and still understand the paperwork. Those two things don't fight each other necessarily. I think a lot of men avoid this conversation because they feel like it sounds disrespectful or suspicious. I think that whenever they ask questions about ownership, inheritance, or what happens if one of them dies, then it looks like they don't trust their wife. I don't see it that way. I think it's part of being responsible. Whenever you're younger and make a bad financial decision, and Lord knows we've all done that, maybe you have time to recover. But when you're in your 60s or 70s and you put a large part of your retirement money into something, you can't easily get back out of that, you guys. And once it's gone, it's gone. That's a whole different deal for you. Trust is good, love is good, family's good, but none of those things replace understanding the agreement you're entering into. You can be committed to your wife, still have a plan. You can be generous and still be cautious. You can help build a life in Thailand without pretending paperwork doesn't matter, because it really does. You need to be sure of what's going to happen if your spouse dies. Can you still live on the property until you die? If you want somebody in your family to be able to inherit part of this, how do you handle that? What are the steps you can take? So there's more to it than just, jumping right into the frying pan. Take your time, think it through, talk to an attorney. Building on family land. Let's cover that topic. Another very common situation is family land. Maybe your wife already owns her land. Mine did. Maybe her parents owned it, which they handed down. That happens a lot in these villages. Everybody soon starts talking about building a house there because on the surface it seems like the cheapest and easiest way to do it. You don't have to buy land, you just have to build a house, and now you have a place to live in Thailand. Hooray! Sometimes that can work out great. There are plenty of families where everybody gets along. We do in my family. The arrangement's clear. The foreign husband, ends up with a peaceful place to live. But that doesn't mean you should skip the hard questions. You need to know whose name the land is in. You need to know whether the title is clean or there's bank loans on it. You need to know whether there's road access, water, electric, drainage, and anything else that could prohibit you from actually living there. You need to know whether other family members expect to use the house, or live in the house or store things at the house. That can be a problem, guys. It's like a family property instead of your retirement home when it gets like that. That last part is where some people get a big surprise in a lot of families, especially in rural areas in Assam. The idea of property and family can be very different from what a Western man is used to. You may think you're building a private home for you and your wife. The family may see it as something more connected to the whole group, and that doesn't automatically mean everybody is trying to take advantage of you. It just means expectations need to be talked about before the money is spent, not after. I made everything perfectly clear with my wife and their family, and we have had zero issues. A lot of problems do not start because people are bad. They start because everybody smiled, everybody nodded, and everybody said, no problem. And nobody clearly explained or understood what was going on. Then a few years later, there's a problem, but now the problem has concrete, family, money, and emotions all mixed together. That's not where you want to be trying to figure out what you should have been doing in the very beginning. Set your rules, make sure everybody understands. Hold firm and make sure your wife feels the exact same way and will stand just as firm with you. If you do that, you'll have zero issues. Okay, let's talk about relationships, health, and changes in life, because that's going to happen. I know some people don't like it when this part comes up. I know I didn't, but relationships can change, and that's true in Thailand, it's true in America, and it's true anywhere else in this world. Good people get divorced, good people get sick, and good people die. Families disagree, adult children get involved, in-laws get involved, money creates pressure. Life changes, guys, whether we like it or not. So before you put a large amount of money into property in Thailand, you need to ask yourself a very uncomfortable question. Is this relationship changed? If it changed, would I still be okay? And I don't mean would you be happy, because nobody is happy when life falls apart. I mean, would you still have a place to live, enough money to move and move on with life, enough income to start over, and the ability to go back to your home country if you had to? If the answer is no, then you may be putting too much of your life on the line. That's a big thought that you need to go over in your head. The same thing is true with health. When you're feeling good, Thailand can feel easy. You can ride around, go out and eat, travel, live in the village, or enjoy the quiet life. But what happens if your health changes? I've seen this happen to friends. What happens if you need treatment in Bangkok, or you need to return to the United States, or you can no longer handle living out in the country anymore. It's just too rough on you. What happens if the stairs going up into your Thai house become a problem? Driving becomes a problem, or being far from a good hospital, is an issue. I'm not saying that to sound negative. I'm saying it because you need to be realistic about your life. Retirement planning should include the version of what that you may exist 10 years from now. You need to play devil's advocate. The dream house you want at 62 may not be the same dream house at 75. Things change, guys. Changes in your head, changes in your body, changes in your relationships. So be sure that anything you do in Thailand, me and a buddy were talking about this, I always look at it the same way he does. I can walk away from it. No matter what would happen, don't do anything here that you don't feel comfortable, that if you had to, for any of the above reasons, you could turn and walk away if you had to, and know you could still have a decent life and start over again. All right, guys, I want to talk to you about renting. Here's my honest opinion about this. For most foreigners, renting first is not a failure. Renting first is the smartest move you could make. I know some people want to feel settled right away, and they don't feel settled when they rent. They feel like they're throwing money away. And I understand that. When you get older, you don't always want to feel like you're drifting around. You want a place that feels like yours. But sometimes the hurry to feel settled is exactly what causes a man to make a decision that he will wholeheartedly regret in the long haul. Thailand changes when you live here full time. The beach town that felt perfect 2 weeks ago may not feel the same after 6 months. The quiet village that felt peaceful at first may start feeling too quiet if you don't speak the language and you don't have much to do. Bangkok may feel exciting until the traffic just wears you down, and the heat. It's very hot in Bangkok because of all the concrete. Chiang Mai may feel perfect during cool season, and then burning season shows up, and man, that's hell. Isan may be real, peaceful, and affordable, but it's not for everybody. You do not really know a place until you live there through normal days, not vacation time. Normal days, guys. Days when the water doesn't work right, the neighbor is burning something, you're hearing all the fighting, chickens crowing and cackling. Your wife is busy with the family, and you realize you can't understand most of what's being said around you. Those are the days that tell you whether a place fits you or whether you were just enjoying the idea of it, and that's different. Renting gives you time to learn about yourself and without locking yourself into a decision. Gives you time to test the area, see what it's like, understand your real costs, see how your relationship works in Thailand, understand the family situation, and figure out whether that's the life that you imagined it actually would be. There's nothing wrong with renting for a year or two while you get honest with yourself. Reevaluate everything you've thought at one point. Run it all through your head. See what it's like in real life. Then after that, you can feel like you're making a more educated decision. All right, guys, I want to talk about what I call the dream house trap. There's something I think of as a trap because a man comes to Thailand and says, I can build a house here for a lot less than back home. And that's very true. You can, without a doubt. But then the house starts growing a little more. A little better kitchen, bigger wall, nicer gates, better tile, better roof, air conditioning, western bathroom, outdoor kitchen. You get it, maybe even the furniture. Pretty soon that simple little house is not as simple or cheap as it sounded at the beginning. This can happen no matter where you build. And even after the house is built, a house is still a house, guys. Thailand doesn't make it magically maintenance free. You've still got to take care of it. And here it's definitely tough. Heat, rain, termites. I mean, it is rough. The sun is very hard on it. And you'll have normal wear and tear. If you build in a rural area, you'll also have to think about who can fix things, because you're not going to find people that are good technicians a lot of the time. I searched and searched to come up with 2 or 3 people that were trustworthy. The other thing people forget is resale. The house is valuable to you, but Thailand property is a whole different ballgame. And in Assam, it's really difficult to sell. A Western-style house in a village is perfect to you, but it doesn't mean there's a long list of buyers waiting. And property values absolutely do not go up here like they do in the USA. So you could just be sitting on a very expensive money pit. There's nothing wrong with it being a lifestyle expense if you know that's what it is. It's no different than an automobile. I've spent things in my life that were definitely not investment. Cars, motorcycles, drag racing stuff, you name it. But I knew that at the time, and I understood that. You're not going to become a real estate person in Thailand, build houses and sell it and make money. It's not going to happen. It can make your life better, and that's cool and that's okay. But I'm telling you, it's not necessarily a smart financial investment, except for the part if you're pleased with it and you can have that I can walk away attitude. You've built you one hell of a nice place for an extremely low cost, and it's yours. You have no condo payments, no HOAs, and you know that you've done something for you, your Thai wife, and your family. So think that part over thoroughly also. All right, guys, let's talk about the exit plan. Before you buy or build in Thailand, I think you need to have an exit plan. It may sound really negative to a lot of you, but I don't see it that way at all. I see it as being realistic. A good exit plan doesn't mean you expect everything to fail. It doesn't mean you're trapped. It means you're not trapped for life if things take a turn and that you may not expect. Ask yourself what happens if you need to go back to the USA or your home country for medical care. Ask yourself what happens if your visa situation changes. Ask yourself what happens if the exchange rate gets worse or inflation keeps killing you. There's many things that can happen. What happens if your wife wants one thing and you want another and you guys just start growing apart? You need to be sure that you can predict and deal with changes. People act like changing your mind's a failure. It's not at all. It's just life. We all have that happen. I've looked at selling everything, keeping things, staying in Thailand, going back and forth, running my businesses, slowing down, all kinds of different options. It's not because I don't know what I'm doing. It's because life is complicated and things change, especially when you're living in 2 different countries. When you're making big life decisions later in life, there are even bigger decisions you need to think through, because if you crash and you lose everything, it's going to be a lot more difficult to regain. That's why I suggest renting. You can keep some of your money in your bank in your home country, rent, see how you like it, see how things go with you and your girlfriend or your spouse before you make any big, huge life changing decisions. I just want to be really confident as I could, because nothing's ever written in stone. It can still change. But try to feel like you've thought things through to the best of your ability and played devil's advocate with yourself so that you don't put yourself in a bad position for no reason. All right, guys, if I were sitting across the table from you right at this moment and you were telling me you were thinking about buying or building in Thailand, I'd tell you to slow down, slow the whole process down, and do it in steps. I'd tell you to first live here for a while, not just visit. Track your real expenses, not a fantasy budget people throw out online. I'd tell him to understand his visa health plan, understand your emergency fund, understand the relationship situation before you start moving any real serious money. I'd also tell you to separate emotion from math. And that doesn't mean ignore emotion, because emotion is part of your life. If you love your wife, you want to help her, and you want to build a good life together, and that matters. You want her to be successful also, but the math still has to work. Your monthly income has to work. Your emergency fund has to work. Your legal position has to make sense for you, and you have to have a backup plan. You can't just say, oh, well, everything will be fine, and call that a retirement plan. If you do that, you're going to get screwed. This is where Thailand cost calculator that I've got can be useful, because it forces you to look at the whole picture instead of just one number. It's easy to say I can live in Thailand for $2,000 a month, but that doesn't tell you much until you include rent or property costs, medical, visa costs, travel, transportation, all the other things that can pop up. Whatever bills you still have back home too, if you're splitting time like I am. The spreadsheet doesn't make that decision for you, but it does make it harder for you to lie to yourself. You've got to fill in the numbers and you can see the results. And I've been doing that for years for businesses, and I've also been doing it for this now, so you guys can have that opportunity. It's really helped me make some I felt like very sound decisions, which otherwise I could have got myself into trouble. Now I got to be careful here. I'm treading on eggshells and thin ice. I don't want this video to sound like I'm telling every foreign man to be suspicious of Thailand and Thai women. Thai families can be good or be paranoid about buying things here. That's not what I believe in the least. I have a great life in Thailand in many ways, and I care about the people here that are in my family. I mean, my wife's good, her family's good, there's good property deals and good reasons to build a life here. But being positive does not mean you should be blind, you guys. You don't have to be paranoid, you just have to be practical. You don't have to assume everybody's trying to cheat you in order to protect yourself. You just need to understand that Thailand has different rules, different customs, and different family expectations. There's just a lot of different legal realities that many foreigners, you're just not used to it and just don't understand it. A man can be generous without being foolish. He can trust his wife without ignoring legal documents. He can love Thailand without pretending every idea is a good one. You can build a good life here and still keep enough money and flexibility to protect your future. There's nothing wrong with that. This is really the whole point of this video. It's don't let the dream get so loud that you stop asking yourself the basic questions and making sure you take care of yourself in life also. There's nobody that'll look out for number one like number one. All right, my honest take on all of this. Buying property in Thailand might be right for some people, but it should probably come later, not in the beginning. Live here first, rent here first, learn the area first, learn the culture. Understand your relationship, understand your family situation. You need to understand the laws, your visas, all the things we've discussed. Then if buying and building makes sense, make the move, but at least have your eyes wide open. What I would not do is come over here, fall in love with the weather, get tired of America, meet somebody and start pouring my retirement into a house before I really even understood what the hell I was doing. That may sound harsh, guys, but I've seen enough of it in life, and I've seen it happen over here, and I've seen it go good, and I've seen it go bad. So Thailand can be an awesome place to live. I feel like it is for me. It fits me good. It's affordable, peaceful, interesting, and in some ways it's a better fit for my retirement. I do miss things about the States, but Thailand, it's a good place. It doesn't remove risks, though. It just changes the kind of risk you need to evaluate and understand. So if you're thinking about buying land, building a house, buying a condo, or putting money into property with a spouse or partner, slow it down, ask questions. Get real legal advice from a real attorney in Thailand. Run the numbers, use the cost calculator. Think about your exit plan, and don't spend money just because the dream feels good today, because I don't want to see you guys end up doing something and having buyer's remorse. All right, guys, I'm going to close this video out. I will say that in closing, if you're looking at Thailand as retirement option and trying to figure out what it really costs, what you need to think about and whether your plan actually makes sense, go to ricksadventurestv.com. I have the Thailand reality guide. Thailand cost calculator spreadsheet, and the bundle for both of them together saves a little if you want them both. I also offer 2 types of one-on-one consulting calls if you want to talk through your own situation with me. I will try to help you all I can. And like I always say, I'm not here to sell anybody a fantasy. Thailand may be a great move for you, or it may not be, and that's how I want to try to help you out. Buying property here may make sense for you, or it may be a nightmare. But either way, you owe it to yourself. Understand the reality before you start spending retirement money. Because at this stage of life, I know for me, the goal's not just to chase a dream. The goal is to build a good life that I can live with and that I don't feel like I made a mistake. So this is Rick with Rick's Adventures TV. Guys, be safe, be happy, be healthy. Take care.